Hi there, I'm Max Simon, the founder of Big Vision Business. And if you've been following us for a little while, you've been probably aware that there's some really significant changes happening behind the scenes here. Jeffrey Van Dyk's the new CEO. I'm focusing most of my energy on building Skybright, and we are really adjusting the frequency and the messaging and what we're up to here at Big Vision Business. And it's all under this context and this umbrella of answering a bigger call, of what it means to see a vision of what you want to create in the world. Know that it's for you. See and feel how big it is, and go on the journey of actually moving towards it. And the purpose of this video and subsequent videos is to bring you along the journey with us. You see, I think a lot of times you often see something when it's all finished and complete and always wonder, how did they do that? How did they get from where I am to where they are? And instead of having you wonder that in our dialogue, we're just gonna kind of bring you along. So today, I'm gonna be talking with Jeffrey about how we at Big Vision Business are answering this call. What's the process we're going through? How do you do it? And what are some of the most important things that you need to know now in order to keep moving forward? So, Jeffrey, what would you consider a higher calling to be, and what's your higher calling in this kind of new period?
A higher calling to me is something that you wake up to. It is something that you know. My experience in talking with so many people is that when you're called, you're called. You might not necessarily know what it is. You might have a sense of what it is or a vision, but deep down, underneath the fear and underneath the doubts and underneath all the story, you feel this deep underlying knowing that, wow, I'm called. And a calling, apart from a vision, is something you receive, right? You're called. There's something that almost is outside of you, whether you call it your tribe or this universe or God or the collective need of our planet, sends out a call, sends out this frequency, and for some reason you receive it. And I would say that the reason you receive it is that you are the person that has the makeup that can answer it. And if you didn't, you wouldn't hear it. You wouldn't have the mechanism or the vehicle to have to be dialed into that frequency, right? But that each calling has its own frequency, and you, because of your makeup, can hear certain ones. And you go, oh, I got it, and I'm called. And it's this sense that there's something for you to contribute in the world. Some way you are meant to have an impact in this world. And there's all sorts of callings, but my experience, especially at this time, is most of the people I'm talking to, when they really know they're called, it's a sense of something much larger than them, right? You might call it a global calling. It might be a more local calling, but still it's something more substantial than just like me doing my thing in the world. It's, oh, I am meant to contribute to a larger unfolding of something happening in this planet at this time, and I'm called to do it in my way, in my field. And certainly for so many of the people that we serve, we're doing it through the lens of business. That is the vehicle we're using to answer the call.
And so I think everybody can probably relate with this feeling of like, I'm supposed to be doing something bigger, but I think most people would also say, I don't know what that's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true?
For some people, yeah, I do think it's true for some people. Not as many people as would say that, though. I think so many people that say, I don't really know what it is, when you really dial in with them, they can tell you at least bits and pieces. It might be kind of like a picture out there, kind of in a mirage. It might be a little fuzzy or a little foggy, but there's still a picture of some sort. And when you really sort of like dial in with them, they can give you a sense of it. right? Here's what I think it is. It's kind of like this. Some people have a very clear picture that often scares the bejesus out of them. You know, a lot of people have a sense of it. Now, some people, that sense is just an internal feeling sense. I have this gut knowing. I don't have a picture. I don't like have a vision of what it is, but I have a gut knowing. Other people have a gut knowing and a little kind of fuzzy picture. And then some people have a gut knowing and a very clear, like, I received this vision. But I have no idea how to get from here to there.
You know, I think you're right that when you drill down with people, a lot of times it's clearer than they want to admit to themselves. Yeah. You know, like if you were to say, what do you really want to do? There's that sense of, well, what I really want to do is this.
Right.
Right? And I don't think it's actually nearly as far off as what people would say it is if you were just to ask them blatantly. But why is it then that you think even if most people can drill down into something fairly quickly, that there still feels like such a massive gap between this thing that they want to see happen in the world and where they are?
I think there's a lot of reasons for it, actually. Let me start here. My experience is that when people receive one of these, what I call a next level calling or a global calling, is that we are on the cutting edge of humanity. We're the people translating some form of new consciousness into reality through our businesses. And so it doesn't look like what other people are doing. It doesn't look tried and true. And because of that, there's all sorts of concerns that pop up. Will it work? Will people respond to this? Will they think I'm crazy? Will I make any money at it? Will I be able to sustain my life and my family's life with this, right? And that's the sort of stuff of it, is there's lots and lots of questions that the ego begins to ask, not because the ego's bad, but because the ego is doing its job, which is to keep us safe, right? And looking out for things that might go wrong. And frankly, when you're answering a bigger call, there's a lot of unknowns. Especially when it first comes into being. I'll give you an example. I was doing this meditation not long ago, actually, and saw in this meditation, clear as day, myself in these rooms full of these people answering these bigger calls, anointing them, and having them anoint one another. And you know, in a business context, it seems so out there. So like, okay, that's great. Let's all come together and anoint one another. That'll be awesome. And so it's like, what the hell does that mean? You know? And when I tune into what that means for me, it's an activation principle that we collectively are activating one another. And that nobody else can do that for us except one another. Because the rest of the world isn't answering this call. We're the ones doing it. So that's an example for me of a part of a vision that on the surface seems so weird, frankly. And yet energetically feels so true. And then the question is, well, great, do I put on an event where I'm like, let's go anoint one another? And of course the answer is no, right? That's not how you would market something like that. But can I see an event where we're really deeply in a process of tuning into what the calling is, answering it, and then having our fellow people on this path activating us and anointing the path? Yes, I can. Now, would that necessarily be in the sales page? Probably not. But would it provide amazing value in an actual experience? Absolutely. So there's also a whole translation issue that comes into place, in that so often the visions don't translate directly into a business or into a service that we feel like we could sell or talk about directly. And there definitely is a translation process that has to happen.
So how would you describe then the translation of what this looks like for you inside of your next level calling and what you're feeling called to bring forward?
The vision that I continually get is of gathering what I would now call the 1%ers. Those people that are receiving these callings. And what I know is that when you receive one, it's not easy. And at first, oftentimes, it's confusing, right? Because it starts to come in and you're wondering, what is this and what does this mean? And then your ego starts to defend against it because it's really going to shake up your life for the most part. And then when you start to discern what it is and answer it, that process can be very challenging to really figure out what it is and what it means and how to make sense of it. And then translating that into a business vision and then creating a business plan and action and actually bring it to market and making money from it, that whole cycle takes some doing. And I know that part of my role in this whole experience is to be a resource for this tribe, be a resource to help them discern what it is and answer the call and activate and understand how to work with their fears and how to become the person that can more and more and more and more fully answer that call. And, for me, the biggest challenge is laying claim to that on some level. A friend of mine, as I was talking about this once, said, oh, so that would mean that you're the 1% of the 1%ers. And there's this part of my own psyche and my own ego that doesn't get sort of like grandiose about it. For me, it doesn't go into like, oh, yes, I'm that guy, right? It goes more into the, wow, that's a lot of responsibility. And can I handle that? It goes into, can I really stand on stage and be this and claim this and call these people forth truthfully and honestly, but also really powerfully. And my own process of really coming to grips with, yeah, I am that person. I am the one to do that. It's not been easy. Fortunately, I have really great people in my life. And there's times when I've called up you just in tears, going like, wow, it feels like way too much. It feels too heavy. And my old pattern was to do it all on my own. So of course it feels too heavy, right? Because part of this is going like, it is bigger than me. I can't do it alone. I'm not meant to. And one of the great benefits, of course, is having people like you in my life and having other colleagues and friends in my life that hold me and see me honestly and clearly. And I even have people in my life that when I really said, okay, I'm going to answer this call, one of my fears was it would go to my head and I would have a big inflated ego and I would get up on the top of the mountain and be all alone and have it crumble and have it nothing and no one. And so part of the thing I put in place to guard against that was my spiritual teacher and a few of my dear friends that I said to them when I said, okay, I'm going to answer the call. You need to be one of my people that really watches and makes sure I stay on the path. And that if I get off the path, if I start to go too much to one side or the other, or if I start to get inflated in my ego, that you call me on it. And that you bring me back into my heart. Because really that is escaping the heart. And I know that this work and this call is about activating my own heart more fully and activating the hearts of the people that are meant to activate the hearts around this world.
You know, one of the things that we were talking about earlier was how in this particular world of thought leadership, you could call it, where people are kind of making a name for themselves in sharing messages and sharing voices, it's super easy to look at the way other people have done it, and especially the successful people, and just put them on this massive pedestal. You know, here they have it all figured out. They clearly have this all dialed in, and then here I am, you know, just this little pizzly thing trying to get it all to happen, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've talked about is how much more important it is to illuminate the actual path, you know, the actual truth of not only what it takes and how to get there, but that it's not always so glamorous and pristine, if you will, and that presentation usually represents 1% of the 99% of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And so how would you speak to more of the truth of what happens as people hear the call and clarifying it? I think even such a big part of it is just the clarification piece. Like, how do I get to where it seems like what they have, which is so clear?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's another question. Is it really that clear for them, for all these people?
Yeah.
You know, so speak to that kind of journey.
Well, first let me speak to the last part there. Is it really always so clear? My experience is that we do reach plateaus, right? We go through these cycles where something new starts to emerge. If you think about winter, spring, summer, fall, like winter, something is growing. We can't see it, it's underground, kind of get a sense of it. For me personally, it feels like there's little wisps of an idea. Like I'll have this like, God, that's an interesting thought. Like I remember a few years ago, I started to have like, I might be living in LA someday. What a weird thought. You know, because I didn't particularly love LA, and I lived in San Francisco, and of course anybody that knows about San Franciscans, we like to dog LA. But it was this wisp that started to show up. So that's winter, it's like underground, but you can feel like the beginnings of something starting to grow, to take root. And then it moves into spring, things start to sprout up, right? And then it starts to mature and move into summer, and then we go into fall. And the beginnings of fall is when something really matures, and we reap the benefits of what we've fostered over time. So in thought leadership, what this looks like is there's something new emerging. I don't know what it is. Sure, I'm still doing the work I've been doing. I'm doing the work that was from the last iteration of something emerging, and it's mature and it's growing. Now, the problem is, if you just hang your hat on that for too long, it's going to die, right? Because we are never, especially the 1%ers, meant to just be static.
Yeah, or it just gets really stale.
Oh,
and
it gets
stale. Really bored.
Right, and then when you talk to those thought leaders behind the stage, you can just see they're miserable. They're so bored with what they're doing, but they have no idea what to do next, and this is still making money, so they're still doing it, right? But for the people that are really like true to their calling, they might keep this going for a while, because we need to keep our lives and our business going, and they might start to learn, like, how do I automate this? Do I start to train other people to do this work, or do I automate it in some way to keep that work going in the world? It's still valuable work. But then underneath, something new starts to emerge, and you spend what I might call soul time with it. And that can look all sorts of different ways, so that whether that's on a vision quest, or journaling, or in prayer, or in whatever way you do it, meditation. And you start to listen and learn, what is this thing emerging? What is this new call that I'm starting to feel? And it starts to sprout up, and you start to have new offerings into the marketplace and test things out and try them out. And you see what works, and you learn more about it, and you become the ambassador of that work more fully until it begins to mature, and you reach that next plateau. And wow, it feels so amazing when you're there, right? Because it's like, oh, I know what it is, it's rocking and rolling, I love it, and it's temporary. It's temporary, right? So if you're really true to your calling, there's always going to be something that has plateaued, and something new emerging, and learning how to move between those and honor what has plateaued and honor what's emerging is really part of the process.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, one, just to recognize that the journey that it goes through is really an expanded period of time.
Yes.
Right? And so to honor that and acknowledge that, and I also heard to make sure to really carve out that time of inquiry, to let the deeper questions gestate, to let the deeper inquiries start to give rise to some clarity. But then you have to bring it into the world.
Yeah. Well, let me talk about one thing first, and that is fostering what already has borne fruit, right? Because I think one of these things, when you're talking about like the thought leaders are on the stage and you see them and everything's perfect and glamorous and whatnot, is you didn't necessarily see the many months or years that it took to get to that place. And you also don't know, while they're talking about this thing that they're known for, that maybe something new is emerging underneath the surface for them. And they're going to their friends and their colleagues and their mentors and their spiritual support team. They're going to their spiritual guidance to start to discern what it is. It's just that you don't necessarily often see that discernment process publicly, right? So you still see the persona and what's all perfect and designed and everything, and that's what you see oftentimes. And I think one of the reasons we decided to do this interview series is to really show people what it's like to look at the underbelly of it, the thing emerging, and what's that process look like, because you and I in our own different ways have both been going through that process personally. So I want to share that just because you're seeing this doesn't mean that something else is emerging for those people as well. And if you've never had something truly plateau, that's oftentimes the most challenging place, because you're trying to really discern what the first thing is that's trying to emerge. You're gripping for it, all right? And so anyway, so I just wanted to share that before we moved on from this point.
So in the next interview, I think we can dive a little more deeply into the actual process of finding the calling and stepping into it. But we've talked about a number of things today. We've talked about what does it mean to receive a calling. We've talked about why it can be so difficult to clarify it and answer it. And we've also talked about the journey, if you will, of accepting that, kind of where you are is fine, and that oftentimes you don't see that everybody's actually on this journey. And so to wrap up this video in a way that really kind of summarizes that as a takeaway for people watching, what would be some of the kind of guidance or wisdom that you could provide as a way to close this loop?
Well, first, for everyone to know, they're not crazy. let's start there. For real. Let's start there, right? That they aren't the only one receiving a calling. That even if it feels really out there or really strange, or it goes against what everybody else talks about in their industry, that they aren't crazy. This is especially true, I just need to add this, for my scientist friends, my engineer friends, who receive really out there visions about new forms of energy, new forms of providing water in this world, all these different new technologies that are coming online. Game-changing things that absolutely break the paradigm of the current understanding in their field about what's so. Especially for those people, I want them to know you're not alone, and that you're not crazy. So that's number one. Number two is, I know you cannot receive a calling without the capacity to answer it. You cannot receive a calling without the capacity to answer it. Only because you have the capacity does it land in you. Do you have ears to hear it? Do you have a body to receive it? So the second piece is to know that you absolutely can answer it. That you have everything you need, even when it doesn't feel like it. And third, to know that you don't do it all at once, ever. You don't ever do it all at once. It's not overnight. And fourth, this will be my last one, to know that you're not alone. That there are other people in this world also receiving callings. And that there are people in this world called to provide a space to make sense of it and answer it. That we're here. And we're doing our job. We're answering our call. So that's what I'd say. So my friends, thank you. Thank you for coming along with us on this journey. Thank you for being willing to answer your own call, even if right now it's in fits and starts, even if right now it scares you some days, even if right now you don't know what it is. We're here for you, and we love that you are on this journey with us. So, here's my request. We would love to hear how this video supported you, and what you want and what you need as you answer your own call. So below, please comment. What showed up for you as you watched this, and what's your deep yearning in terms of what you want to know and what you want to hear about this process of answering a larger call. So please go ahead, comment below, and we'll be sharing more videos with you like this about the journey that is answering your call. And as always, we invite you to head over to bigvisionbusiness.com to join us and stay abreast of this journey. We're going to be producing more videos like this, a whole series of what it is to answer your call. So if this video resonated with you, landed with you, and you want to stay up to date with us on this journey, head over to bigvisionbusiness.com. Be sure you sign up, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much. We love you. Goodbye for now.
Subscribe.